Hey, good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? You guys pretty excited to be in the meetup on Thursday evening? Yep, pretty much. So, my name is Alex Brooks. A little bit about me. I'm the founder of Entreprop. We're a software company. We do predictive analytics and automation solutions for companies, basically to help them make better decisions and speed that up and enhance it. Uh, I'm really excited today because, first of all, when I first started this meetup, there's probably like maybe 10 or 12 people that showed up, and most of them were my friends. So I don't know how much that really count. But since then, this meetup has grown. I looked at the numbers today. There's almost 800 members for this data science and action meetup, and we actually just started in November. So it's fairly new. Thank you guys for showing up and consistently showing up every month. And some of you guys I've seen a couple times, so I definitely appreciate it. So kind of the format of this meetup is going to be a little different from what we normally do. For any of you guys, actually raise your hand if you've been to a meetup, this meetup before. All right, cool. So we got a couple of people. So the way we normally do things is every month we have a speaker that comes and shares basically how he's utilized data science to solve real world business problems. So there's one person that comes up here and talks, shares his information about what he's done in a specific industry. But this time we decided to test the waters and change it up a little bit. And we're focused specifically on retail. So we're doing a discussion panel. But before I get started, I'm actually going to shoot this over to Sage, but I want to give a couple shout outs. First of all, to Atlas Workbase. This is an incredible space by far. They're actually putting this together, and a little bit of a surprise for you guys. This is going to be recorded. So, I mean, if there's things that you wanted to ask, or maybe things that you wanted to write down and you didn't have a chance to, you can watch the video and kind of catch up on it. So I want to give a shout out to Atlas Workbase for making that possible and putting this together for us. Also, I want you guys, if any of you guys are like a business owner and you're looking to check out new spaces, this is a great workspace. Usually what they do is they give every person that comes here at least one free day pass. So you guys should definitely check it out. They'll shoot you an email afterwards. I also wanted to give a shout out to the team, Galvanized team. We have a member from there, Sage, who is going to be our moderator today. So I'm actually going to kind of turn it over and give it to him.
My name is Sage. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Really, I think we're just going to get started with introductions with our panel. So I'm actually really just going to hand it back over to them. So if Ben, if you'd like to start off.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben. So my background is I've been working kind of in the data field for probably the last 5 or 6 years, everything from healthcare to more of the marketing side. So I've done a lot in like fraud detection. So that's been a big focus of mine in both areas. And then also in like customer value, like predicting customer value and like, okay, if I want to give them a product, how much are they worth essentially? So that's kind of been my space. That's my general quick me.
And I'm Ricardo. I am a founding data scientist for a stealth mode real estate decision and strategy startup. And I work in all sorts of different parts of data science, from deep learning image analysis, statistics, regression methods, whatever is appropriate for the situation. Previous lives were PM at Microsoft on the big data team. So scalability is name of the game there. And also, like him, healthcare startup called Accolade, and have since been working on my thing for the past 9 months or so.
Hey everyone, my name is Rebecca. I'm currently a data scientist at Zillow Group. Before being at Zillow Group, I was a student at Galvanize as well. And I've been in Washington State about 2 years. Before that, I was in Connecticut, where I went to a liberal arts college and did English and history. Please don't do that. It makes your life very difficult. My day job includes using a lot of SQL and Python, and I'll be happy to speak about that and just data science in general.
Cool. And in a minute, we're going to open up for the panel to do discussion. And then there's going to be questions afterwards. And if you have a question, just raise your hand and I will bring over the microphone so everyone can hear you. And the question I think really for the panel is, how do you see data science influencing the retail market space right now? And kind of how do you see that evolving in the future?
I can go first because I have the mic. I think one of the places where I see data science really revolutionizing retail is like personalization. For example, companies have a lot of data on us, and like for example, Facebook knows how old you are, where you live, are you married, are you single, are you male, female, like all your demographic information it knows, and like everything you click on it records that that's an interest of yours, and it makes it really easy for them to target when they market to you. And other companies as well that are using online marketing, they have so much data on you that they're able to target you very closely, which I think improves our experience as customers. The things that are shown to me are things I'm very likely to be interested in. There's risks in how targeted things can be, but I think it's made it so much more smooth to shop when like the things that are shown to you are things that you're more likely to be interested in. It makes it easier. You don't have to go to the store to look all day. You can just find something that you're interested in because it's suggested to you. I think the more data we have, the more innovation there is around retail and around how we can use that to make shopping more interesting and smooth. Yeah, I think that's it.
Obviously, I'm next. I, as a disclaimer, have not worked in a retail scenario, but I do consult with a lot of clients on small business scales for nuanced applications. And one of the things that I think gets overlooked a lot is the power of very basic data analytics. I mean, we talk about data science being super powerful and sophisticated, but your mom and pop shop doesn't have the data, nor the expertise, nor the funding, nor the need for some really sophisticated data science. And their ROI is really going to come from just targeted applications with really simple models, statistics, and just establishing rigor. One of the things that I think is going to be more prevalent is that business owners are going to have to think a lot more like data scientists. Otherwise, they're going to be completely pushed out of the market space because of the power. And so one of the things I do is I try to get people to learn how to think like a data scientist for themselves, whether they're a marketing person, a salesperson, a fellow engineer. And so the thing I'm seeing going forward is really combining powerful and easy access to tools, more publicly available data, and services to help people bootstrap simple scenarios to make their business a 21st century business, actually. There we go. Yeah. a little bit further ahead. So I see it really changing automation. And one of the interesting things that comes up, I think, is how does it degrade our experience as a consumer and losing that personal touch? Or is that not a problem? And do we just go fully automated with no personal interaction? So a good example is the Amazon Go store.
Okay, thank you. So I think the big thing that I see is that retailers have a really big chance to make, I mean, you look at Amazon and any of those big companies, they just make purchasing frictionless, right? Like if they've gotten to the point where it's like, I don't have to think, I just click and buy because they tell me what to buy. And so I think a lot of companies can continue to do that, and they're not. You know, you look like I wrote a piece recently about like Men's Warehouse, because to me, I'm like, Men's Warehouse, I don't know, has anyone ever gone to Men's Warehouse in person? I don't know. Do you guys like their like sales process? So I think they're pretty good at it. They're pretty good at like recommending you what you work. You know, if you need a new suit, they're good at saying like, oh, you need a new suit. You probably need a new shirt. You probably need new ties. And they're really good at that process. And it's like, now the gap that I don't see, or I wish I'd see, is like, but why don't you do that on my phone? Like, why can't like why don't you tell me what I should wear today? Like, I think they're going to have that opportunity where it's like, you know what's in my closet because you have all the data of my previous information. You could almost recommend me, hey, here's the next product you should buy from us because it goes great with your suit that you already own. Or, hey, maybe today you could wear this suit or something in that nature where it almost becomes like, I don't have to think about what I'm wearing today. So it's about them figuring out how to almost limit my thoughts in a weird way. You know, you think about Google has reduced our need to think about certain things or memorize certain things. I don't have to think about where I'm going. I just put it into Google Maps. That'll tell me where I'm going. I don't need to memorize a location. There are definitely some locations I cannot get to without Google Maps, although I've gone probably 20 or 30 times. I mean, the same way, like somewhere like Men's Warehouse has that opportunity, or Stitch Fix, which probably is a better opportunity to say like, hey, what if we started recommending what you wear today? And then suddenly I won't even think about what I wear. It'll just be, what does my app say to wear today? Okay, that's what I'll wear today. You know, it's really all about, right, simplifying our everyday decisions and like removing that friction. I think is the best way to put it, is like, hey, if you can take away something that someone doesn't like doing, like for instance, I don't necessarily like picking out my clothes every day. I don't necessarily like thinking about, okay, what color goes with what? I'm terrible at that. Like some people are great at it. I am not. I rely, like I was so happy when I went to Men's Warehouse because they picked out colors I would never have picked for myself. And I looked at it and I was like, I look great. And so that same way, they can do that same thing with an app. And it's just like, well, yeah, they know what I have. And I think that's one of those big things that a lot of retailers are missing. Is like, look, you can offer me a lot of services because you have this information. And I think that's what they're missing. It's like, just provide me services. I'll buy your stuff. Give me what I need. Save my time like Uber does, like Amazon does. And, you know, I'll purchase stuff for me. Don't worry. So that's my opinion.
Please tell me you're working on the app.
You know, it was something I've been thinking about, and I'm like, you know what? I'm almost willing just to be like, Men's Warehouse, can I just, because like the biggest thing, right, is data. Like I need your data. Like I'm almost willing to work on this for free if it like works out. Like, you know, you can give me something of it, but like I just think it'd be cool. It's one of those things where it's like, look, I'm a data scientist, I'm an engineer. I just want to build things. You know, you take care of the financial portions of my life, and I'll just build things until, you know, that's all I want to do.
So if anyone has the data, Ben will build that for free.
I will build it for you. It'll be fun.
Real quick, if there's any other questions, but I have a question for you. It's like, how many people own a retail business right now in the audience? Woo. One. Woo! How many people work in a retail business? Several people. Cool. Does anyone have any questions for the panel?
Alex.
So I would say, all right, if you're in retail, like where do you, or how do you get started in terms of collecting data?
Is there anything specific you want to start?
I often advise people after like looking at their business at a high level, what's probably the best place to start. So for example, some people might not have a digital footprint. So maybe you get them started with getting a website up, integrating analytics properly into it so you can see how things are progressing, whether or not it's producing an ROI. You always want to be able to tell people, was that worth my time? Because you're going to spend money, hopefully not too much, and be able to see a return and then funnel that return back into it. But getting started really comes down to like, what's the business priority? Sometimes if you don't have customers, you don't want to be automating stuff to serve them because you don't have customers. Sometimes you have customers and you want to get more. So maybe looking into marketing is good, but it's easy to spend a whole ton in marketing and get no return. I know because I avoided doing that, but it's very tempting. So I'm not sure if anyone else has any opinions.
I think a simple example of data collection is when small stores like coffee shops give you a punch card and they say that if you come here 10 times, you can get the 11th purchase for free. And I'm one of those people who never remembers to bring it, so I'll get like 10 from the same place. And I think like an easy next step from that can be like an email address where they can track it to your email and they can know that how many times has person X been to our store because you have your email address on there. And then maybe perhaps building onto that to like an app where you can You can like scan a code every time you go to the store. I think like baby steps depending on the size of the business, because you don't want to build a solution for scale and yet your customers are maybe like 50 regular customers a month or something like that.
I just gotta say, those reward purchasing program apps work really well for me when it comes to boba. So it's not too expensive. Definitely gets all your tracking info so they can know where you live and haunt you day and night. But if you're considering doing that, do it. It's not expensive and it works really well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question, because I definitely had like some people come to me like, okay, we want you to build us a data science like solution of some kind. I'm like, okay, what kind of data do you have? And it's like, we have a CRM. Like, what is it? And it's like, it's an Excel sheet with people's addresses and emails. And it's like, and names. And it's like, great. So no information whatsoever, no transactional information. I can only, like, the best you can do is send them an email, then hopefully get more information from them. Like there are some sites you can actually use to like get reviews, like if you send them all to your email list. But I think again, following along on that like punch card idea, I think that's a great way, just because especially for small companies, it's a great way to track people. You know, Albertsons and all these companies have been doing it forever with their loyalty cards. Again, Men's Warehouse gives you $50 for every 500 you spend, and it's attached to, I don't know if it's your name or what it was, you're basically your card. And so just doing something like that is a great way to start, is like putting some sort of loyalty program, because then you have me. And then I'm like, well, I'm spending $500 here. I might as well get $50 back. It's worth it to me. Like at that point, it's like, yes, have my data. Like if you have some service you want to make out of it, great. Like it's worth the trade-off. Like it's a small trade-off at the end of the day. Like Facebook has way more data that I've given to them for free. So might as well give away some data to a small mom and pop shop. And it's actually interesting. Like you look at companies like Stitch Fix, how they collected all their kind of data on like what you like and don't like, is they sent it to you for free, or they sent it to you and then they got information by you sending it back. And that's giving them, oh, they don't like this stuff. So this kind of person does not like X stuff. So even some companies like Men's Warehouse might think like, oh, we don't have a lot of information on like this person's personality, but I think like what their clothes tells you a lot about their personality. Then you just have to translate that data. So I think collecting that data, even though it might not seem useful, like that transactional data, it tells you a lot. It tells you, are they a high frequency spender? Are they a low frequency spender? Do they buy a lot? Do they buy a little? What do they usually buy? And then you can kind of start more tailoring things towards even that basic information to better maximize every sale. Because I think at the end of the day, you're trying to maximize every sale to the point where everyone feels well, taken care of. I feel like I bought good value and you feel like you got a good amount of money out of me. So it's just that trade-off, even though it's simple data.
If I can add one more thing, it's definitely important if you're considering integrating some data science into your business to talk to someone about what you should be recording. Because one of the big problems that comes up is one of my friends' clients will come up and say, hey, I've got all this data, make a model for me. And I'm like, this data is worthless because you just didn't structure it properly. It doesn't have everything necessary for what you want to do. There's this concept where all data is gold, and that is not true. Most of it's fool's gold, and you have to really spend time curating insights out of something that might have value there.
Two questions.
Hi, I think Ricardo, you said something, and I might be taking this a little bit away from the retail and because more towards consulting, because I just got into data science. And one of the things you were mentioning, I think, is you were, Ben, making people think like a data scientist. Yeah. My question to you is, and I'm also asking this because I'm trying to get people to buy in, or eventually when I get good at it, try to buy into whatever I'm selling them. What do you do, or what kind of things do you do to try to help people, especially people who don't have any, besides the regular hublob or whatever they're hearing on TV, to actually think like data scientists and stuff like that?
So I think the biggest impact I had was in my previous company in terms of like implementing a data science culture. And that involved doing boot camps. So I would put together presentations that were really targeted intros on the concepts for data science that help people understand, if you're on the marketing team or if you're on the mobile team and you're creating things from scratch, this is what you need to think about when you're creating data or creating your experiences so that data science can be effective. Because one of the things that happens, it's a real big struggle for existing businesses. You want to spin up this really cool new feature like predicting customer acquisition rates or whatever. And your whole infrastructure is not tailored to do that. So you suddenly have to either jerry-rig some existing solution onto it that sucks, or you have to spend a whole ton of money and time to redo your whole engineering ecosystem. And so if you tell people in advance, this is what I'm going to need. So if any of these points come up where you think that sounds like data science, they can proactively loop you in. That's from an organizational perspective. From like a small individual perspective, getting people to understand that when you're predicting stuff, when you're classifying stuff, maybe judging a person as weird or not, that you're an algorithm, and your brain's using this creepy algorithm to judge this person on online dating. But you can get a program to do that same thing for you. So these processes that you're doing that might not be all that fun, you can spin up an algorithm to do for you if you just get the right data and apply the right model. So it's whether or not it has feasibility, value, and cost is good enough. Does that make sense for you? Talking about data, what?
You were just talking about like boot camps or whatever, like little training.
Boot camps, yeah.
Training sessions in your organizations or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what would you be discussing to people like this? I'm sure you want to talk about machine learning, but you're not going to go into all the little algorithms and whatever trees or lasso or whatever the heck you probably want to think about.
I would talk at a higher level. So you have to really target your communication to the person you're speaking to. So if you have someone who has no knowledge of math, then you talk to them about the act, like you're trying to classify something, you're trying to predict something, and then tie that to an example scenario. Like if you're a day trader and you're trying to decide whether or not to buy or sell, you can make an algorithm that will, based upon previous data, tell you what to do. And you keep it high level so that people can get that foundational knowledge and then start asking themselves questions of what they want to learn more about, and then forward that to you. Because you're not going to get everything in a day. Your goal is to set a nice structure for them to then follow up with you, which is great if you're consulting because you can charge by the hour. Anyone else want to add something? Okay.
My question is, what makes for good data in your eyes? So like I recently had a client who was tracking teachers and their students, and the thing that I noticed that was not helpful is that they had no timestamps according to when their students came and left or when their teachers came and left. So it left, in terms of trying to do any time series analysis, very vacant, because all of the data would essentially be data leakage if you were doing any sort of updated, trying to analyze time. So that was one that I encountered. What are the other examples that you encounter specifically in retail that makes for not good data?
I work at Zillow Group, and like our main product for a long time has been our website. And one of the ways we collect data is Google Analytics. So clickstream data. And there's a lot of things you could collect on one page. And how do you decide what to collect or not, what not to collect? And you might neglect one thing, and then a month or a few years down the line, you want to calculate something. And you're like, we didn't tag that page. We didn't tag that. How are we going to get that metric? And I won't contradict what Ricardo said about collecting as much info, like not all information is good. A lot of it is fool's gold. You'll have a lot of rows and rows of and columns of data that you may not be able to use. But I think like maybe consulting with a data scientist who's an expert in the domain can help you define what information you want to collect. Because even when we do data science, you have like columns you think may not be worthwhile. But like once you build your model, you're like, actually, this tells us a lot of information about the classification or the prediction. So I think like I think the only way to know is to try and to actually look inside, and without any science or without any data, then you're just guessing. You're just saying maybe this is good, maybe this is bad. And I think there needs to be a more rigorous process of deciding what to collect.
And just to clarify, I think that all data can do stuff, but a lot of times what you're trying to do is not possible with the data that you have. And that's one thing that happens to be quite often with people that are less experienced. It's like if I'm trying to do a home remodel, if I haven't done it before, I don't have a good idea of what work it actually takes. But if you educate someone, they can start judging for themselves whether or not it's feasible. And I think a good like thought experiment I give people is if someone told you predict the temperature tomorrow and you just gave them like the day of the year, you can kind of do something with that, but you can get better if you know like what was the previous day, or maybe what's the humidity right now, stuff like that. And if I was going to say like a heuristic for good data versus bad data, I would say how much of it are you using in your models and how much of it is not usable, because maybe you don't have the ability to join it. There's like a lot of publicly available data, but maybe you can't find a way to combine the data sets together because you didn't do a good job of instrumenting your schema. And so suddenly half your data sets are not being leveraged. So you have a lot of dead weight in your data warehouse.
Yeah, I think kind of maybe it's bouncing off them. It also kind of depends like what is your target, like what's your end goal and what are you trying to do? And I think that's usually where like I start, because otherwise, you know, just doing random exploratory analysis kind of gets you nowhere. But if you kind of have a product or an algorithm in mind or like an end goal, like I want to recommend a product to someone, then you kind of know what data you need. And then you can kind of just start to define like, yes, this data meets those qualifications. No, it doesn't. I think like often I think bad data to me more refers to like duplicate data, missing data. And so things like that. And so I think it's sometimes that your data doesn't fit your problem. And I think that's usually more what you're stuck with. So like, for instance, you were missing data, you were missing a timestamp. So in that way it was bad. But like more from like a general point of view, if you have all the data there, it's more of, okay, I have all this data, but I'm missing this field. And so that's usually what goes on is like, usually say like, what's your goal? Do you have the stuff to make that goal? And that can be, Rebecca said, you know, a data scientist that's a subject matter expert, or a subject matter expert that might do the task anyways. Because a lot of the things that we're trying to do as data scientists are just replicating, you know, what a human might do. Again, with like retail, it's like a product recommendation system is just a salesman, right? Like it's an algorithm that's trying to sell you more stuff, right? Like you go to a car salesman, they're going to be like, hey, with that Honda Accord, you could also get, you know, a DVD player inside. Would you like a DVD player inside? You know, they kind of do, like you said, that creepy, not creepy algorithm. They kind of look at you and like, well, this guy can probably afford you know, this and this. And, you know, it's just a little more intricate because they're like, well, you clearly make about $100,000 a year because we know that, because we have that information on you, because we see your credit card information. And so that's kind of, it's like, what are you trying to do? And that kind of tells you if your data set fits or not. You know, keep going.
And there's definitely a lot of data quality issues in a lot of companies. So a company I worked at had a ton of data, but none of it was able to be combined together. And there was a lot of loss in the logging. So not only was there little combinatory strength between the data, there was unreliability in terms of what it actually represented. We're going to make sure you work out real good, Sage.
So there's something to be said for the power of data science and analytics in terms of the scale of your business and whatnot. Obviously, there's a lot more you can do when you have like Facebook or Amazon levels of data at your disposal versus, you know, a small mom and pop shop. What are some of the kind of problems and scenarios you can tackle on the lower end of business, like when you're first opening up a business and whatnot?
I think that from a personal perspective, a lot of my startup was based upon stuff I hated doing by hand. So just to give you some background, I do real estate investment as a hobby. And I got tired of like bouncing through Zillow and Redfin by hand and analyzing whether or not the estimates made sense and whether or not this thing was correct, and doing my market analysis. And so I just automated all of that. And I think if I'm a business owner and I'm good enough at thinking about data science, I can start seeing the pain points in my business day to day and see, can I write an algorithm to do that? A realtor friend of mine was like, all these CRM solutions are too expensive or not that great. And some of those scenarios of like reaching out to contacts and following up with leads and stuff, you can do a lot of data science around it. It doesn't have to be sophisticated. The simple act of tracking it makes it measurable and then opens a whole world of scenarios that might not be complex or expensive to execute.
Yeah, I think I'm just gonna add like the basis is like you kind of need to start tracking it. It's all about like I think transactional data. Like some people again will have like more dimensional data, like especially like real estate agents. They'll have like people's information and where to contact them. But like the next step as a business, if you want to start actually gaining insights and also maybe creating some sort of algorithm that can future build into something, it's like, well, you need to start then recording transactions. And then it comes down to the fact is it worth to record them? Is it not? Can you record those automatically? Can you not? And so then that's the next trade-off for a lot of businesses is like, is it worth for you to actually scale up? Like you said, Amazon, and they do it naturally just by being in existence, being a website. So you basically, if you can make your website do the same thing and since like record a lot of this information, then that would be one step, would just be like, okay, how are you going to record this information and where is it going to go and how's it going to be shaped?
And from a very simple physical example, like let's say you have a brick and mortar store and you're wondering why you're not getting people walking in, or maybe you want to increase the number of people that convert from foot traffic to actual visitors. You could do some minor remodel or some gimmick and get some person with a clicker just logging for a day. How many people came in? How many people didn't? And try to do some hacky statistical testing and say, did this change to my business make a difference in my foot traffic converting to actual traffic?
This is not a direct answer to your question, but there's a joke about, like the Fizzbuzz problem that people get asked in technical interviews. There's a very simple Python solution to it, but you could also write a much more complicated like machine learning solution, but that's not necessary and it's not a worthwhile use of time. So I think like having a good understanding of the business problem, actually that's always the first step of the data science process. The business understanding what's the need and what kind of solutions are feasible for that scale.
I actually have a question. So, as a retail owner, now I have all this data. Where do I actually store it? Give it to me.
Excel documents. Google Sheets.
I worked at Microsoft.
Should have said Excel. No.
They have a lot of solutions. So does AWS. So does Google. I would say what's most convenient for you is how you should go about it. But if you're going to try to do something fancy with it, think about your pipeline backwards. So if I'm trying to do a web service that tells me, should I buy a stock or not? And then, cool, I've got this web service that has this model. Okay, what's that model trained on? And then you think about, okay, I need this data. Well, is that data like real-time based? Is it a real-time updating model? Or is it going to be a static model that you deploy every so often? And you start thinking about what's the sufficient data store. Because sometimes it's fine to be a flat file. Sometimes you want to be in a low latency table like DynamoDB or columnar store. And you just need to have good judgment from experience or from consulting an expert on where you put your data in what form, so that you can also make sure to combine it easily, because it sucks when you have a real-time problem and you're having to churn through massive data every single time just to get an update.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it really is kind of like specific to not just the problem, but also you kind of have to look at the talent you have. Like if you've got no one that understands how to use SQL, the last thing you want to do is put all of your stuff in a database and then be like, I want analytics out of this, and then realize you have to go spend $100,000 a year or $80,000 a year for an analyst who understands SQL to pull it out. So that's one of the first things is like, well, do you have the people that can do it? Like, because if you don't, what's the point? Then you might as well put in Excel and be like, well, it's not terrible, and we can move, if we ever need to move it somewhere, we can, or a CSV or something.
CSV is like the safest bet.
Yeah, Excel. Well, you were Microsoft. You know, it messes up everything. Excel just messes up everything.
Yeah.
I don't understand why all my numbers change every time. Can you explain that to me?
Fun little story, because I like to laugh. I'm sure you all do too. One time, a friend of mine was complaining about a date she had, and this dude was bragging about being the PM for the bold feature in Excel.
Is that the end of the joke?
That was the whole story.
Okay.
It was a very quick and sweet and Uber ride.
I'm sure it is like surprisingly complicated, but I wouldn't brag about it.
So yeah, it's actually interesting because like when I worked in college a long time ago, when I was working, that was forever ago, like three years ago. No, I actually worked in the culinary field, and we worked in I worked in fine dining, and eventually we started seeing this shift from like actually cooking pieces of food to using sous vide. Does anyone know what sous vide is?
Yeah.
A few of you? Yeah. So basically, what happened for a lot of us, what we think, besides the fact that it's easier, it was also like
Way better.
well, it's way better, but also way easier. You do not need talented people to cook sous vide. You literally is like, look, take this bag, put it in the water, pull it out, sear it. It's done. So it's the same thing here where it's like, that's what like Access is, right? Like Access is basically this like, look, you don't need to understand SQL. You just need to drag tables, and then terrible things happen actually at the other side of that. But yeah, so again, you just got to judge your talent and then say like, hey, can they manage a SQL database? No. Like, I mean, even for some people, like SQL Server is one thing, and then they get to Oracle and it's like, what is this beast? Like, what's a control file? What's this? Like, I've never used this before. I've never seen it, and they can't even handle Oracle because it's new, it's different. So again, it's just about looking at your team, seeing what they can do. Don't expect your team to like be able to do Hadoop if they've never done Hadoop. Like that's a terrible idea, and you're wasting a lot of time and money.
And it's super cheap if you learn how to do the basic stuff yourself with, let's say, AWS, because AWS lets you be your own ops team and save $1 million a year on 3 engineers that don't really care about your bottom line.
I don't think there's much to add on to that, except that like choosing the thing that you can use and the simplest thing. Like Google Analytics is pretty easy to use for like website traffic, for example. So it might not be worthwhile to like pull that data and then store it in like an S3 bucket on AWS. And like these things are quickly changing. So I don't feel like I'm very loyal to any solution at the moment.
Thank you, Sage. My question is, to what extent do you notice that the actual industry of data science is beginning to be automated? And by that I mean, and I mean specifically in retail, some, for example, software as a services, especially more like the social realm, they're A/B testing so much that they're now able to just like try things and allow it to see if it's working or not. I'm curious how mature the market is in terms of, like a service like Swift, who is tracking fraud, right? And then you just put each thing on your shopping cart, and you're this and you're that. How advanced do you notice that the industry is in terms of building tools?
I think there's still a lot of room for growth in the industry, both in terms of automation, but also for human talent. I don't think we've exhausted the different possibilities of data science and solutions that we can come up with. And I think we need to be able to become repetitive at what we're doing before a machine can do that. And I think we're still, I wouldn't say at the infancy of data science, but I think we have a lot of room to grow before it's automated.
I feel very impressed with the current level of automation because, for example, I am not a deep learning expert. I understand how it works. I did image processing for my undergraduate, and I was able to, in a single day, get an algorithm spun up and working that I can actually file a patent on. And that is absurd. All I have to do is get the data, do the right problem setup, see how well it works, and that is incredibly powerful. I mean, everyone here can make a hot dog, not hot dog app.
I think kind of on Ricardo's point, the actual technology is pretty impressive. I think the hard part that we're dealing with right now is how do we use it? How do we take, again, like I can just basically plug into Google or Amazon's, APIs for image recognition or something like that, and with almost no knowledge or pretty much no knowledge of what's actually going on. Here's the tensor. Tell me what it is, right? Like I don't even need to know what's going on behind the scenes. You just, here's the data. You tell me what it is, almost to that point. And it's more about, okay, but now how do we translate this? And I think this is the hard part, into a business product. How we translate this into a money-making thing. So I think that's the harder part. Is, okay, we got to take this thing and actually make it useful. And so I think that's kind of the state we're at. And I think it's where everyone's kind of at right now, is like, yes, companies like Amazon, Netflix, and Google that have been living and breathing data since the day they were born kind of get it. But like other companies, again, like Men's Warehouse, like all these corporations that you keep looking at, you're like, you guys just don't get it. Like, like you keep blaming Amazon for all your problems. Like you're killing the retail industry, but there's plenty of companies that are making it or doing well that either haven't used data science or just existing, and they just have a unique niche. But they're doing well. So if they could somehow utilize some data science, that's where they would even, amplify more. And so I think that's really it. It's like, okay, the hard part we're having is like, we can't just speak to this system, make me money, which is basically what we're trying to do. We're like, okay, now how do we make it make me money? Because that's the business goal, right? Like data science or not, it's like, how do we reduce costs or increase revenue? That's really what they care about. Not all the cool stuff that we care about.
And one thing, I was at a meetup a while back, and the VP of AI for Microsoft was talking, and the thing that became very clear was that we're at a point where it's no longer an issue about the tools being good enough. It's about just having the data. And that's the paradigm shift that's happened in the past 2 to 3 years. Before, you needed an expert who could really mine the data and model it well with a lot of deep knowledge. And now you can get a schmuck like me to just get something up and running real quickly just by having data. And the undertone, the subtle point to your question is, I think we'll have a job for a while. because it's very difficult to know what's worth doing. We might not do it the same way. It might be less of the grind work of actually setting up the problem and doing the computation. It might be more of the, I guess, PM style work, which is this a scenario that makes sense, and how do we set up ourselves for success? Because the bot's doing most of the work for us.
I have 2 questions over here.
Quickly, one thing obviously I think we're all dealing with is obsolescence, especially if I can even put it down in the retail thing. I mean, somebody does whatever, builds what database solution, whatever, in 2 years, whatever that person put up is gone, or someone's using spent all this time to learn R. All of a sudden, Python is becoming more important than R. Where should somebody really focus, I guess, in general, when it comes to trying to build a solution and stuff like that, and try to battle against obsolescence?
I think it's a very appropriate question, because right before we were just talking about the power of brands. Make a brand. It doesn't matter how well automated something is. If you've got a brand, you can sell that purse for $1,000 that cost you $1 to make. So there are some things that seem protected from efficiency and automation?
I mean, so much, because it's always the hard thing, right? Like what framework should I learn? Whatever should I learn? I think the answer is that matters less. Where it matters more, you have to understand how to use the tools, how to use the different chunks, right? Because when it comes down to it, oftentimes the pieces that go into the thing that you're building, whatever the product is, don't change that much. It's what are the, what you're using, those details change, but the actual big pieces don't change, right? Hadoop is a data lake, but it has its similarities to a data warehouse, right? You still need to get the data in a very similar format out and, use it from there. So the components might change, the little intricacies might change, but overall it's about the pieces. It's about understanding how do I make those pieces. And that's just comes from, being able to pick up, again, with programming really quickly. I think that's something that a lot of programmers have learned that they just have to do is like, I have to learn a new language, and it's just part of the trade.
So I work in the marketing side, and we have been trying to, of course, integrate data science and machine learning and all that, but we come to this problem that we cannot integrate emotions, right? Like it's hard to get emotions. It's easy to get behaviors. You get that from the data, and especially in websites, you can get all that, but how can we integrate emotions to that, or from where we can get this?
Does anyone use Instagram, like actually use Instagram? You don't have a bot running your account and doing random things. Okay. I think that's a good example. We seem to, where we have emotion and personal connection, someone tries to shove automation into, and then it dilutes the experience, because right now the bots are clearly lacking that personal human touch, but they're getting better very, very quickly. And so I wouldn't be surprised if soon you're going to have to be competing with a bot to sell your product, because it's better at speaking to someone over the phone than you are.
I think obviously with a website that's hard, because like you're just getting click data, you're just getting that information. Then the best thing you can probably do is try to almost figure out where that person is, like where is your target market, where are they spending their time. Like I still have a theory that a lot of things that like are being produced by Disney these days, they've just pretty much scraped all of Reddit and taken all of the ideas from all their best fans and like put into movies. Like they're like, wait, we finally figured it out. They've been telling us forever, just pick a younger, dorkier Spider-Man. And now everyone loves, I feel like, Tom Holland to a point that it's very funny. So I think like that's sometimes like, well, where's your target market hang out? So like you might not be able to get the emotions from your actual data that you're getting from your website, but you might be able to be like, but we know our target market hangs out here. So if we can find people that look like them, Facebook has that look-alike concept. We can see what they're talking about. We can see what they're liking, what they're not liking, what they're enjoying, and kind of work from there. I mean, if you can get them to give you their Twitter handle or something, or their Facebook, that's always great to just scrape data to get some more of their opinions. But yeah, just based off of behavior, it's obviously very limited.
We have time for a few more questions.
I got a quick question about data security. I'm sure that the new GDPR went in effect last Friday. What's your take on that? And then what does new data regulation mean for?
Oh, wait, you say GDPR?
GDPR, yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely an interesting thing. Like, I'm curious to see, because I saw a lot of reactions where like sites are just face out saying, you just can't use our site. Like that's a lot of their response is like, look, we just give up, Europe, do your own thing. So I'm almost curious to see if like Europeans get frustrated enough where they're like, we want to use these sites, so forget GDPR. No, that definitely makes it harder. I think it's interesting because to me, it's like, look, these companies, it's an interesting balance where it's like, we like using the internet for free, but we don't like ads. Like my cousin uses ad blocker and does a lot of stuff that's, everything from BitTorrenting to whatever. And I'm just like, but you like products, right? Like they need to make money. Like I get they make way too much money, but so it is that balance where I think people are eventually going to realize they do kind of need this data, like, but how much, and I think it's just about figuring out ways that you can either, make it as anonymous as possible. I work in healthcare a lot, and we do tons of healthcare analytics, and it's about, how do you, when people start seeing this data, there cannot be, PHI, which is like, private health information, that cannot be in there kind of thing. And so it's always about like, how do you get this data without revealing too much about a person? I think that's possible. And I think really what's happened with GDPR is they've overregulated, right? Like it's one of those like, well, we're just going to throw a blanket over it and not let anyone touch it. But I think eventually they're going to have to push back, because it's just like, things are not going to be as good anymore. It's just one of those things. It's like, look, you're going to have less quality stuff. If that's what you want, fine. But that's your choice. So that's what happens when you let people that maybe don't understand the internet make decisions on it.
Yeah, sorry, I had to blow my nose. I get an idea for the question, and I would say that I don't really expect any privacy in the modern era. I think there's an illusion we have of privacy, but I think realistically we should admit they were pretty much naked when it comes to the way corporations know everything about us. And I'm fine with that so long as they do really cool stuff with it. It's got buttons, you can pull it.
I think I'm for overregulation, because I think it's a bit scary what irresponsible companies can do with our data. And we don't really know the possibilities until it's too late or until something has happened. I think it's good that we've encountered these mistakes, because we can think more critically about what are we collecting, what are we exposing, how are we using this information, even though it's still information that's out there, kind of being more responsible with how we're using it.
I think this will be the last question.
It's not necessarily a question. I was just kind of like a clarification with regards to GDPR, because it's not really about not collecting data. It's about companies ensuring that the data that is collected, it's the user has access to it and they can control it. Yeah. So for example, at Microsoft, we have put a lot of work for several years now to ensure that if we're collecting data about you, you can go online and say, actually, I want to know what data you have about me. You can download it. You can view it all. You can delete it if you want, but we give you the access to it. And because it's important, because there's a lot of companies that really do transactions with your data as if it's currency, and we a lot of times don't have control over it. And you can give it to one single site, and then your data it's out in the open for everybody. So I think just it's important, and we'll see what GDPR, how is it going to affect in general. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
All right, the last question.
You excuse me that I'll do a little bit of the same, and then I will ask a question. Just to clarify, one thing I discovered about GDPR is that most people don't know what it is. So please look it up. It will be important for you one way or another. Yes. What you have seen in the last 2 weeks is about 20 emails in your email box with, hey, would you mind please clicking on this button so we can email you in future? And 3 things about this. One is the rights that gives you. That's on Wikipedia. I'm not going to recite them. Second is profit. Will companies make profit? I think that's an empirical question we're going to see very soon. And third one is, do data scientists like it? Not all do, but some European data scientists say, finally, now my bosses are going to actually look at my data and ask questions. So still not gonna happen. You can hope, you can dream. So the question I had, I think, Ricardo, I think you mentioned in the beginning that you consult with different companies. I'm more on I have some experience in data science, but I've never thought that small companies would actually care. So how do these people find you, or do you find them? And then do they pay you, or do you volunteer? Like, how can we help?
All sorts of different things. So I have some people who've asked me to consult for their group on a case-by-case basis, and they bring clients to me. Others are by referral because My mom talks a lot about me back home, and she knows a lot of small businesses because she's an accountant. So they're like, oh, what does your son do? Oh, he does math. And like, oh, I heard all about that. So they then ask me, like, can I use deep learning from my burger stand? And I'm like, you can, you probably shouldn't, but anything's possible.
And then he charges them $100 for that one question.
And it's really case by case. So I like to align my business with the success of a person. So instead of charging per hour, I normally charge based upon, like, here's a flat fee, and if you're happy with it, I keep it. If you're not, you get it back. Because at the end of the day, I am looking for repeat business and people that trust me. I already make enough money. I want to work with people that I like working with.
I also do a lot of consulting, and I think that's you kind of like, look, if it's a small company, you kind of are like, well, I don't mind helping. Like I think a lot of technical people find themselves in a blessed position where a lot of us make maybe more than we need in some cases, even in Seattle. And so it's always fun to like just work on fun projects, but also like if it's a company that it makes a lot of money, it's like, well, you guys make a lot of money, like. Share the wealth. We're all giving around. I think, just economics. You judge a situation and you try to make it fair. I think that's the key, is like fair at the end. Fair is fair.
Did you want to add on to that, Rebecca, before we wrap up? Cool. We're going to wrap up the panel discussion then, and just kind of open the floor for talking to each other. You're welcome to stick around and talk to our panelists. I also wanted to give a huge shout out to Phil in the red shirt. He just graduated from Galvanize in our data science program. And he's an amazing person, and your team should hire him before anyone else does. If you don't know what Galvanize is, we're a programming bootcamp and co-working space. We always have a lot of stuff going on there, so we probably have something that would interest you. If we don't, I have stickers and bottle openers that might interest you. Alex, did you want to say any closing words or anything?
Yeah, I really just want to say thank you for the panelists. You guys did a brilliant job. Definitely kind of show their appreciation for them. And also thank you for everybody who attended. I mean, this doesn't work without people showing up. So, and I think you guys had some great questions. So awesome. And to add to the GDPR, the good thing is you don't get reprimanded right away. They give you a series of warnings just to let you guys know. All right. Well, yeah, definitely stick. Oh. So the question was, will we do any more events specifically on retail? The answer is yes. We are definitely exploring and learning more about this space. So I will keep you guys posted on that. Also, I said this before, but I'll say it again. This actually was recorded. So if there was any like good nuggets that you took away from that you didn't get a chance to write down, I'm going to share the audio with you guys after. So. But feel free, like Sage said, stick around, network, meet each other, come talk to the panelists, come talk to me. Yeah. And I will also be sharing the panelists' contact information upon your approval. Okay. All right. All right.
Also, thanks to Alex for putting this on. So. Yep.